So a little bit about myself. I started working in the auto industry when I was 19 years old. I was going to Emory University. I was looking for a part-time job, and that really became a full-time job. And while working at the dealership, I saw a lot of the software they use was pretty legacy. There was high turnover rate for the salespeople. So after graduating college, I moved out to the Bay Area. We went through an accelerator program, and that's where Selly Automotive CRM was started. We have hundreds of dealers in the United States and Canada that use our product. And I've also established myself as a thought leader in the industry. I've traveled across the US giving presentations at various IADA shows about millennials, mobile marketing, and changing trends in the used car industry. So let's talk about like a high level overview for today's webinar. I'm going to talk about digital retail 101. That's a big hot topic in the industry. And I'm going to focus it around independent dealerships and whether a digital retail product may or may not work for your store. And if it doesn't work for your store, I'm going to talk about helpful, cost-efficient tools to enable you to sell online without having a digital retail product. I'm also going to discuss changing your marketing messages to adapt to the new normal, purchasing and selling cars online at auction, how a CRM could automate organized communication and give your dealership that Carvana-like experience online. And then I'm going to talk about the future outlook for WSIADA dealerships. And at the very end, we're going to hold 15 minutes of Q&A, and I'm happy to dive in deep in topics that we're discussing in this webinar, as well as other questions you may have about technology and used car dealers. So let's look at COVID-19 in review year to date. It's been a crazy year. Q1 pre-pandemic, we call that the old normal. April 2020, we're seeing shutdowns in different states. A lot of dealers were waiting on their PPP. Consumers were receiving extra unemployment benefits, and that created a great summer. Used car prices were at an all-time high, and we saw some recovery in June and July. And now we're in September, and many SMBs are still closed, operating not at full capacity. We have the elections coming soon, and inventory is tougher than ever to source. When you think about the world that we live in, even pre-pandemic, very consumer-centric. And when you think about digital retail outside of automotive, one company comes to mind, that's Amazon. Amazon, whether you want toothpaste or you want a prefab house delivered, you can buy it on Amazon. They have a great e-commerce-like experience. And then there's two other brands that have a great omni-channel experience. And this is more of what dealers are thinking about, because some consumers, they might want to buy online, others, they might want to visit the store. And when you think about Apple, for example, I could go to the Apple store online, I could order a product, or I could set up a meeting with a genius in store, and I have that great omni-channel experience. And a lot of these concepts have translated into these new auto e-commerce players. So if you look at Carvana, they have a $38 billion market cap, which trumps CarMax, which sells more used cars per year. Vroom, they went public a couple months ago. They had their IPO. They have a $6.2 billion market cap. And both of these online e-commerce dealers, they sell completely online across different markets. And then there's another player. They're called Shift. The difference with Shift is they actually deliver a test drive to you. They try to not hold inventory, more on like a consignment model. And they're going to be going public later this year through something called a SPAC, which is a special purpose acquisition company. And if you look at Carvana's stock price, they've been one of the biggest beneficiaries for a publicly traded company. Since March till now, their share price has gone up over 670%. But why? What are they doing that's interesting? Well, even before the pandemic, Carvana did a great job marketing their value prop and brand over the past several years. They've identified the need for transparency. They've created a lot of interesting marketing efforts, like their Carvana centers that you'll see off highways that are like essentially a vending machine. They also do a great job with the photos of their inventory. And this is a big deal. If a consumer is going to buy sight unseen online, having good quality 360-degree photos, I could see inside and outside of that used car. And they're going nationwide. They have a huge investment in growth. So they're less concerned about profitability right now, and they're more concerned about getting into as many markets as possible. So a dealer might ask, or a used car dealer, how can I add Carvana elements to my business model? So throughout today's webinar, I'm going to talk about how you can incorporate some of the elements, not all of the elements, of Carvana, like a digital retail or e-commerce like experience, or automated communication. Carvana is great about text messaging, FaceTiming a customer, working with them in their preferred communication method. So let's start out with Digital Retail 101. I'm going to talk about what digital retail is for the independent dealer audience, why you should consider, so use cases where it works well, and why it may not work for your dealership. There are some use cases where it won't deliver on expectations. So what is digital retail? At its core, digital retail is the process of allowing customers to interact with your website during various stages of the car buying experience. And there are a lot of digital retail vendors. There are over 30 vendors, mostly selling to franchise dealers, their version of an e-commerce like checkout experience on the dealer website. And I'm going to talk to you about the two main types of digital retail products. And again, why you should consider using a digital retail product. 95% of vehicle buyers use digital as a source of information. They're not starting at the lot, they're starting online. So here's Roadster. Roadster is probably the most well-known digital retail product. They've raised over $30 million in venture capital. And their differentiation, what they do is they offer a separate website for digital retail. So instead of building into your existing dealer website, they provide you what they call a Roadster Express store. So it looks something like this. This is Planet Auto Group as an example. So you have the ability to pay cash, finance online. If you decide to finance, keep in mind, it's based on an estimated credit. So this isn't anything final. This is more so getting the initial part of the deal done. So when they go into the store, you know, they're doing 1,000 down, they want to go for 60 months. So keep that in mind as well, that a lot of times rates are based on an estimate. Then there's Modal. Modal raised nearly $13 million. And like many of the other digital retail products, they're an add-on to your existing website. So I'll show you a couple screenshots of how Modal works. So you have your typical dealer website. They'd have something like a buy online widget. You click that buy online widget and you're going to get a pop-up on your website. Do you want your vehicle delivered? Do you have a trade-in? What's your payment? Boom. Both of these products are really more geared towards franchise at the moment. They're going to integrate with more franchise products. And I'm going to talk about reasons why a digital retail tool may work for your dealership first. And then after this slide, I'm going to talk about reasons why a digital retail tool may not work. So one thing that a dealership needs to consider is if your website receives a high volume of traffic and leads on your dealer website, whether that's organic or paid, then digital retail may work. But if you're getting most of your leads that go through a third-party portal, let's give an example of AutoTrader, and you're not getting a lot of inbound traffic on your website, having that digital retail tool is not going to help if they're on AutoTrader and they're submitting a lead. It has to be on your website. So keep that in mind. Another problem we've seen with a lot of independent dealers that have used digital retail and later churned is they might have a basic like $99 a month or a free website with their DMS. And if you're looking at $1,000 a month digital retail product and you have a $99 a month kind of basic cars for sale like website, you could run into some issues just having that digital retail product on your website. Another consideration is your dealership is going to have to adapt to new processes with the digital retail product. And a lot of times these products will not integrate with your Fraser DMS or your Auto Manager DMS, for example. Another reason why it might make sense to consider a digital retail product is if you've lost deals to a Carvana or a Vroom in your market, if you have previous customers who are making requests to buy online, if you sell a significant amount of inventory out of state or you sell highline vehicles, then a digital retail product may be value add for you. So why would a digital retail product not work for a dealership? Like what models would it not work? One example is buy here, pay here. These digital retail products are thought through like the typical franchise retail customer happy scenario. But in the buy here, pay here capacity, most of these digital retail products are not going to be able to adapt to that sort of model. Another consideration, if you're expecting a digital retail tool to integrate with Fraser, for example, it will not. If you expect a lot of integration with a digital retail product, you're going to be dissatisfied because right now they're focusing a lot of these on integrations with franchise dealer products. And like I mentioned earlier, you need a quality website. You do not want to put a digital retail product on your basic $99 a month website. And also consider this, digital retail also takes educating your customer on how the tool works, how much or how little the customer can do parts of the deal online. And that's oftentimes a big struggle for an independent dealer. They might put a digital retail product on their website, but their consumers are not informed about it. They don't know how to use it. They don't know how much of the process they can do. So definitely take that into mind. So what I've put up here is a digital retail buyer's guide. So by the end of this section, you should be able to determine the following three. How much can your store spend on digital retail per month? Number two, what are your integration expectations with the digital retail tool? And lastly, can you deliver on this experience end to end? Can you educate the consumer? Make sure your sales team understands the difference between a TrueCar lead that you get in versus a digital retail super lead that comes into your CRM. So here's some questions and considerations. Like I mentioned earlier, how much can your store afford per month? Be sure to determine the price point up front of the digital retail product before you see a demo of it. Like I mentioned earlier, some of these companies, they've raised over 30 million in venture capital. They have a really cool looking product, but before you invest your time into that demo, make sure the price point is up your alley, because for the average independent dealer, it's going to be several times the price of your dealership website. Number two, have a list of products you have and whether they integrate or not with the digital retail providers. So basically put together a list of all of the systems you use at your dealership. And when you're on that demo call, ask them, do you integrate with X? Do you integrate with Y? And then lastly, get a month-to-month or a minimum commitment on a digital retail product. Again, a lot of these are built for franchise dealers, so they're going to sell an annual contract. I would strongly suggest getting a month-to-month contract, making sure it works with the systems you use at your dealership, make sure it works well on your website, get that month-to-month commitment. So what's the net-net? My opinion is digital retail is here to stay. There are many cases where it can work for a dealership, but there are also cases like buy here, pay here, where digital retail has not caught up, and keyword yet. One issue with independents in digital retail who are earlier adopters is going to be lack of integration and the high cost to implement one of these tools relative to the costs you're going to pay for your website, your DMS, and other products you use at your dealership. So if digital retail is not right, or if I want to augment digital retail, what are some helpful and cost-efficient tools to enable my dealership to sell online without having a digital retail product? Number one, it's a free tool. It's called Calendly. And what this allows your customer to do is schedule an appointment online. What can appointment be? It could be service drive. It could be delivery of a vehicle. It could be seeing a specific vehicle in your showroom. And we're starting to see dealers leverage this tool on their website, and it's super easy to set up. You could go to Calendly's website. All you have to do is name the event. Let's say it's a dealership test drive. You could even add your dealership address. It's going to send them a calendar invite. You could add specific notes, and you create a link, and then you just put that link on your website. I want to show you what this looks like for the dealer customer. So the dealer customer could go to your website, they see the Calendly integration, they click schedule a test drive, and it takes them to this screen. The calendar automatically syncs to their time zone. They just select a time that works for them, and it's going to send them that appointment confirmation, and it's going to add professionalism to your dealership with a free tool and give customers the ability to schedule appointments online. And that's part of that digital retail experience. And then there's a texting tool versus a chat tool. 98% of text messages are read versus just 22% of emails. And when you give the customer the ability to start a conversation online, they could start talking about the deal, you could build rapport. I'm going to explore in this segment a texting tool versus a dealership chat tool. So we'll start out with the texting widget. Having a texting widget on your website looks something like this. Customer, they enter their cell phone, they could start text communication with you. Most CRM website providers, they offer this for around $25 or less per month is an add-on. And I'd strongly suggest a dealership consider a texting tool on their website and consider utilizing texting as it's becoming a popular means of communication, not just for millennial consumers, but even baby boomers, and especially during the pandemic. The mistake that I see a lot of dealers do is have a chat widget on their website that is monitored by a third party. So basically a chat widget, think of it like instant messenger type. Someone could start a conversation, much like texting. But the big mistake that I see dealers do often is that chat service is either not monitored, so you're missing chats, and that might frustrate the customer to go to another website. And then the second thing, and I see this so often, is the chat provider outsources the communication to a third world country. That individual in another country has no idea about your dealership, what inventory you have on your lot. So any communication that they have through the chat is very basic, and sometimes it could even frustrate the customer. My opinion is if you're going to have chat widget on your website, you either need someone at your dealership to monitor it, or you want to work with the third-party vendor who you really understand. Do you have one specific point of contact? Are they going to be educated about your inventory, your dealership? Are they going to be able to field the most simple questions like, can I schedule an appointment? And you could accomplish that with a Calendly without needing a human, all the way to, is XYZ vehicle still in stock? Another way to bring an interesting digital retail experience is the YouTube app. And I know everyone here is familiar with YouTube. They have a free app. You can record video walkarounds. You could send personalized video messages to your customers. And you could have your salespeople added to your dealership YouTube channel. And whenever you get a new vehicle in, they could record a walkaround. And the cool thing about the YouTube app, it's going to format it in a playable link. So you could send it through a chat, a cell phone message, or email that to a customer. And while there are many apps out there, I feel like this is one of the easiest to use in my opinion. And it creates the least amount of issues with playback. I've seen some other video products and the links won't work or the embedding just doesn't look right. I think YouTube's a great, consistent, free product. Facebook Marketplace. We're all familiar with Facebook Marketplace. It's become one of the hottest ways to sell under $25,000 vehicles, and it's become a real replacement for Craigslist. Most dealer management systems, they're going to syndicate inventory to Facebook Marketplace for free. And keep in mind, this differentiates from the Facebook ads project or product. So there's a separate Facebook ads product. You could do like typical forms or display campaigns. Facebook Marketplace is different. And another consideration is in order to respond to Facebook Marketplace, you have to have Facebook Messenger. And here's a Facebook Marketplace / Facebook Messenger warning. So in this case, I would suggest to be sure to separate your personal profile from your business profile. If you have a salesperson who has a suspect Facebook profile, do not add it. Here's an example of a customer not wanting to buy from a dealership through Facebook Marketplace because they found out that the owner was very political. So obviously people could pull up your Facebook page and they could see your political beliefs, and especially with an election coming up and all the friction going on here in the US, I definitely tell you to keep in mind who's responding and what their online profile and presence looks like. So my next section, I'm going to talk about changing your marketing messaging post-COVID-19. Obviously, we're living in unprecedented times, and you need to make sure, especially if you're doing COVID messages, that you're doing it in a professional way. So many dealers are addressing COVID-19 head-on their dealer website. This is Car Automotive Group. They have right on their homepage discounts for healthcare workers, first responders, and they also have right on their main website that they're taking steps to reduce the spread of COVID, and they have a process. They actually line out their sanitizing process, everything that they're doing to ensure consumer safety during COVID-19. And is that still top of mind for consumers, and especially with winter coming up? I definitely suggest having a page on your website where you outline the safety measures that you're taking to address COVID-19. And even if you're doing things like remote delivery, for instance, that's something else that you could include in this. So let's talk about COVID messaging do's. Do give clear and to the point information that your customer needs to carry out transactions. So earlier I talked about if you have a digital retail product, for instance, explaining to the customer how to use that. One way to accomplish it could even be a video. Tailor your brand's COVID-19 messaging to who will be reading it. And remember that tone is important. And remember, you don't want to communicate fake news. Make sure if you're sending out anything COVID related that it's qualified and it's coming from a reliable source. And be sure to update your website page, your social media, your Google business page, and what you're doing to address business during the COVID-19 climate. Messaging don'ts. These are things not to do during COVID. Don't send a COVID statement just for the sake of sending a COVID statement. We've seen tons of dealers continue to send generic COVID statements that do not add a lot of value. Don't offer vague reassurances or be unclear about the processes or precautions being put into place. That's not because, there's a very litigious society, but it's also because you want to make sure that you're setting expectations with your customer, you're explaining how you're doing business during the pandemic. And be sure, of course, not to spread rumors or unproven information. So a lot of dealers have started to put together scripts for their team so they can address COVID-19. and do it in a professional, consistent way. I'll give you a couple examples. So, customer concern: is it safe to enter a vehicle just dropped off by one of your sales or delivery people? Your response: safety is a top priority. We're taking every precaution when it comes to delivering your new vehicle. Can I walk you through the steps we're taking? And of course, make sure you have those steps lined out in a script. Customer concern: I'm not sure now is the best time to buy a vehicle. We understand your concern. Right now, we have special offers. We're taking every safety concern we can during these great and difficult economic times. And also, one thing we've done for our dealers, we've put together a generic template on how a customer could buy from their store during COVID-19. And here's an example. It talks about concierge pickup and delivery, personalized video presentations, i.e. through the YouTube app, test drives delivered to your door, and it's customized dependent on the state and the dealer and what they allow. But having a template that outlines how you're selling to consumers during the pandemic, I think, is definitely a nice to have. So the next part of my presentation is going to be around CRM, and it's part of the foundation of communication management in 2020 and beyond. So I'm going to talk about the most common Indy dealer myths that we hear about CRM when we talk to a prospect. They might say, hey, I have a DMS system and it pretty much does the same things as CRM. Or my dealership's too small to have a CRM and it's way too expensive. Or I don't need internet lead management. All the leads come to an email inbox that we share at our store. Or our store's buy here, pay here. We're wholesale, we're specialty, we're lease here, pay here. We don't need a CRM. Here's some considerations on CRM. All franchise dealerships have a CRM, and some OEMs even mandate specific CRM solutions, and they have specific response times. Like Chrysler, if you don't respond to one of their Chrysler leads in a certain time frame, your dealership gets dinged in the franchise world. True CRM functionality goes well beyond just managing leads. It's managing text messages, Facebook communication, basically all of the communication you have and all of your sales process or prospects organized into a digital filing cabinet. And also CRM is going to add automation to your processes, which is going to save an independent dealer time. And the smaller dealer, they need CRM the most. So some food for thought on why your dealership needs a CRM and questions to ask management. Number one, how do you track ROI from internet leads, and which of your lead providers have the highest closed rate? If one of your salespeople left your dealership tomorrow, they had all their prospect data and text messages on their mobile phone, what could you do to recover that data? Lastly, what is your set process for follow-up, feedback, dispute management? What systems do you have in place to handle these? A CRM could touch on all of these aspects. One of the first parts of implementing a CRM is getting buy-in from management and the sales team. Usually management's a lot easier. They understand that there's going to be autoresponders to internet leads. They'll be able to set up like a work plan. That's basically a scheduled follow-up system. You know, what happens 3 days out, what happens 7 days out, what happens 10 days out, what happens 14 days out to a new internet lead. Transparency into what their sales reps are doing, what their sales reps pipeline is like. Like I mentioned earlier, if a sales rep is fired, he or she is not walking out of your dealership with all the valuable data. It's in the CRM. And dispute management. You have transparency into calls, emails. So in like a he said, she said scenario, you could pull up emails that were sent, texts that were sent to diffuse a potential situation. Why does the sales team need a CRM? So this is usually the harder part, because some salespeople, they feel like, oh, it's Big Brother kind of looking over my shoulder by implementing a CRM. Well, first and foremost, from the salesperson's view, it's going to automate data entry with the driver's license and VIN scanner. So quickly out of fresh up on the lot, quickly add a trade-in with the VIN scanner. You're going to be that 24/7 salesperson. You'll have mobile CRM. You'll have automation, as soon as you get an internet lead that comes in. So if you're working with a customer, that automation will help you as you're wearing multiple hats. Ability to remarket to customers, remind yourself of follow-ups with the work plan system. And also be compliant when texting and emailing with opt-out capabilities. We live, again, in a very litigious society. So there's also CRM and texting. And texting is a very effective means of getting in touch with consumer, especially millennials. And like I mentioned earlier, 98% of text messages are read versus just 22% of emails. But the one thing that you need to consider, if you're gonna text someone, you need to be compliant. Your sales team needs to be compliant. So here's what that means. You have to send an opt-in message to your customer in the first outreach. You also have to give them the ability to opt out of communication. If they opt out, no one at your dealership can contact them. Fines range from $500 to $1,500 per non-compliant text. There's something called the TCPA texting guidelines. You could Google that. We also have some resources on the Selly Automotive website. And if you're asking, name a dealer group that's actually been sued, I would give you Lithium Motors. They've been sued for several $1 million for not being compliant with text messaging, and that's publicly available online. Like I mentioned earlier, responding to leads with video is a key way to interface with customers. This is Elise Kephart. She's become a renowned trainer in training salespeople on using video at the dealership. When she worked at Sunset Honda and San Luis Obispo, she was a top salesperson, and every internet lead she got, she sent them a custom video. And I'm seeing more and more salespeople adopt that same practice, not just in the franchise world, but also in the independent used car dealer world as well. Another advantage of a CRM is email marketing and follow-up. So I could set a customized autoresponder if I get a TrueCar lead, and then I could have a different autoresponder if I get a Geico total loss lead, and then I could have a different autoresponder if I get a subprime credit lead. Moreover, I could have different stages in my sales pipeline and have email automation at those stages, whether it's scheduling an appointment or just adding automation and keeping that customer in the sales pipeline. And another cool thing about email in a CRM is you can track email opens. So let's say there's a customer I've been trying to get a hold of for a while. They haven't been opening emails. Finally, I get a notification on my desktop. They open the email. That's a great time to give them a call. So that's another advantage of email in a CRM system. And then there's mobile CRM. Like I mentioned earlier, mobile's becoming huge. So here are the things that you want to look for if you're investing in a mobile CRM. You want the driver's license and the VIN scanner to quickly automate data entry. You also want what's called a native app. A native app would be an app that you would go to the Apple Store or you go to the Google Play Store to download. A responsive web app, you would go on your mobile phone's browser. You don't want that. You want a lot of the key functionalities of the web-based version, but understood that there's certain things on mobile and web that don't translate and vice versa. And then you also want to have text and voice capabilities, so they don't need to use their mobile phone to text. They could text through the app. They could record their inbound, outbound calls that they make through the app. Here's some KPIs that every dealer should be aware of. And I'll start out with cost per lead. This is the average cost per lead in a given period of time based on marketing spend by source. And the more important metric is CPS, that's cost per sale. Let me give you an example mathematically to give you some context. Let's say I'm using TrueCar as the lead provider, and in the month of August, I spend $1,000. I get 10 leads. My cost per lead, $100 per lead, 100 times 10. My cost per sale, let's say of those 10 leads, Only 2 of those convert to a sale. My cost per sale is going to be $500. And that right there will help you evaluate your lead provider to see if you're really getting ROI. Another KPI that the independent dealer needs to track is conversion rate by stage. So this allows you to basically benchmark your sales team against each other and see where in the funnel potential customers are getting stuck. And lastly, ROI by internet lead providers, again, tracking your average sales time, your ROI from your different lead providers, what spend is working, what is not. The great thing about these KPIs is most of them could be tracked through a CRM. And Cox Automotive, they put a really interesting list together of 12 metrics every dealership should measure. And I'm going to talk about a couple of the most important ones. So market days supply, inventory turn rate, reconditioning time, gross ROI, and then ROI on ad spend. 2 different calculations. Gross ROI being the full deal and ROI on ad spend being more ad spend focused. And when dealers think about metrics, there's 2 types of metrics. There's what's called a vanity metric, and then there's what's called a North Star metric. So what's the difference? Impressions and clicks are what are considered a vanity metric. I could do, let's say, a Facebook campaign, and I could get 10,000 impressions, and I could get 500 clicks, but I may get 0 sales. So the metric that I want to track is not impressions and clicks. In that case of Facebook advertising, it would be cost per sale. I want to understand what the actual conversion is and the costs for that lead based on my investment in that Facebook campaign. So what does the future outlook look like for the used car marketplace? I'm going to start out with online auctions. During the pandemic, this has become a real hot topic. Sandy Shorts, who's the president of Cox Automotive, said digital auctions are safer, quicker, and better for everyone involved. We don't want to go back to people on top of each other. So a lot of the larger auction companies are realizing that online auctions are becoming huge. And I put together a list of the most popular online auctions to give you guys some context into what's out there. We'll start out with ACV Auctions. This is one of the fastest growing independent online auction platforms. They tripled the number of vehicles sold in 2019 to over 240,000. They have 7,000 dealerships, 4,000 of which are independent. So this is one of the online auctions that works with majority independent dealers. Then there's Backlot Cars. They were actually recently acquired by Car owns Odessa for over 400 million. But the cool thing about them is they buy all of their used inventory from new car stores. Each vehicle is inspected by a certified mechanic, and they have an option to a floor plan. They call it a flexible float financing, and that's all done through the Backlot Cars platform. Then there's Manheim Express. Obviously, Manheim, owned by Cox Automotive. They're the largest wholesale auction in the US. They have, integrations with Viato, for instance, and they have lots of inventory from like commercial sellers and personalized recommendations. Then there's TradeRev. So now TradeRev is owned by Car, and so is Backlot Cars. So that will be interesting to see unfold over the next year. But it's a dealer-to-dealer marketplace, list vehicles, get offers in a minute. And the cool thing they have is a peer rating system and a dedicated arbitration team, but so do all of the other larger online auctions. And here's some interesting market insights from late September 2020. Wholesale prices are starting to fall, but the next several months could be rocky. We have the upcoming election, a possible resurgence of the virus. So what inventory decisions should you be making right now? One interesting thing I've done recently, I've had 2 conversations on our Used Car Dealer podcast with the smartest individuals in inventory management. The first podcast I did was Bob Hollenshed. He is unequivocally the largest used car wholesaler in North America for the past 40 years. And the second person I interviewed about inventory management was Dale Pollock. He's the founder of Viato, which is the most utilized inventory management product in North America. They have over 10,000 dealers that use their product. So I put the cliff notes of these two episodes. If you go to sellyautomotive.com/podcasts, we have the full episodes, but the cliff notes from Bob Hollinshed's perspective of what's going on right now. He suggests, number one, use an inventory management tool, whether it's a Viato, an AccuTrade, or another tool. In this market, making appraisals without all of the data, as he says, is theft by ignorance. That's a word that he coins. Number two, sell quickly rather than trying to hold a specific gross number. Every day the vehicle has a cost of depreciation, so move inventory quickly. And lastly, it's a bubble in terms of wholesale prices being at an all-time high. He even gave a couple examples of used cars being more expensive than their same model year new car counterparts. With Dale Pollock, he echoed some similar feedback that Bob had. He talked about being very careful in this market as he thinks it could go one of two ways. He thinks option A, prices can go up higher of wholesale inventory if more stimulus arrives. And B, treat every borrowed dollar used to purchase inventory like it's your own. And lastly, stick to your gut in the volatility of today's market. Is there major developments every single week, and it's literally like a roller coaster. Just like Bob Hollinshed, he suggested to use an inventory management tool and reflect on the ways you can reduce overhead costs in your business model. And he had an interesting point about Carvana. What Carvana is doing with those vending machines, they're not getting the best commercial real estate. They're building up. And he had some interesting feedback about Carvana's model, how they could be profitable if they wanted to, but they're more focused on growth right now. And I think a lot of independent dealers could think about, like, how could software add automation and make one full-time employee a 1.5 full-time employee, that one employee plus the automation of the software. So what does this mean for Washington independent dealers? Number one, I would suggest having an effective niche in today's marketplace. And I'll give you a couple examples of real used car dealer niches. This is Access Auto Sales, Apple Valley, California. They specialize in newer, lower mile, dealer certified vehicles. They have their own certification and dealer certified program with every single vehicle, and they focus on lower mile, newer inventory, no accidents. Here's an example of Steingold cars, and they have an out-of-state buyers program that's right on their website. They heavily advertise this, so they'll ship anywhere in the country. And if you go from another state to their dealership and buy a car, they'll reimburse you for the one-way cost of travel. So that influences people who might have not otherwise gone to their dealership to go there. First-time buyer program. This dealer, first-time buyer program, no cosigner, no minimum income, interest rates as low as 1.49, no money down, no credit, must be 18 or older. Or this one, I think it's really interesting. This is the Shoreline Automotive Group, and they have over 8 individuals at their dealership who are bilingual. So their big pitch is that they are a bilingual sales team and they speak your language. So here's an interesting graphic that Brian Pash, who's an automotive consultant, put together. This is software turnover for franchise dealers. There's no data out there on used car dealers, but it's kind of interesting. So the average DMS stays at a dealership 5 to 10 years. The average inventory management tool, 3 to 5 years. CRM or a website, 2 to 3 years. And the turnover rate for a chat tool, trade-in software, online video provider, 1 to 2 years. Now, more than ever, a modern dealer tech stack is important. There are must-have solutions that you need to be competitive in 2020 and beyond. And I'm going to talk about these at a high level. Number one, a rock solid DMS. This is the central nervous system for your dealership. You need a reliable DMS that fits your dealership needs. You cannot sacrifice in this area. A mobile-first CRM and internet lead management system. This allows you to manage internet leads, customer follow-ups, hold accountability to your sales team, and it's not as cost prohibitive as you've thought. There are definitely affordable CRM solutions out there. Inventory management tool like Bob Hollenshed and Dale Pollock recommended, especially in this pandemic marketplace. A responsive or adaptive dealer website, and if applicable to your model, a digital retail tool. Social media presence, whether you're on Facebook Marketplace, your business Facebook page, you need to have a presence on social media. A digital marketing program, whether that's Google AdWords or some sort of paid marketing, digital marketing is a lot more impactful and effective the majority of the time when compared to traditional print marketing. And email your domain. I cannot tell you how many dealers have an AOL or a Gmail email instead of having it at their dealer website. An email is anywhere from $2.99 to $5.99 a month. You have to have email at your own domain. It looks professional or unprofessional if you don't. Reputation management software. What happens if someone leaves you a 1-star review on Google Reviews? Are you notified? How do you respond? Compliant text messaging. So I talked about TCPA earlier. And a lot of times people are like, give me an example of like an ad. Here's an ad for this law firm. They're called Shams and Gentile, and they specialize in TCPA lawsuits. They have these advertisements all over the place. And they say, tired of a spam text? All you have to do is screenshot the text and text it to them, and they'll start looking into it and see if they could do a lawsuit. So there definitely are a lot of litigious individuals out there, so that's why I suggest being compliant with texting. Bring millennial employees into your dealership. One great way to have an employee who's going to be digital friendly and get along well with the younger audience is a millennial. And I think dealerships in the past, they haven't made the role of a salesperson at a dealership as interesting or impactful. They don't advertise at college fairs. I think a millennial is a great new hire for a dealership. Someone who's going to be tech savvy, understand social media, could help implement software because they're going to get it more intuitively. Be data driven, track all your KPIs, cost per sale, cost per lead, what's your ROI on your ad spend, your turn time. Be data driven, especially in the marketplace where you're competing against franchise stores and upstart online car dealers like a Carvana or Vroom. So let's talk about the recap and takeaways from today's presentation. I've talked about digital retail, changing your marketing messaging, CRM, buying online at an auction. I've shared some of the insights from Bob Hollenshed, Dale Pollock. I've talked about must-have dealership solutions as well as effective niches. So if you go to our website and go to media, we have something called the Used Car Dealer Podcast, and we try and interview some of the brightest minds in the used car industry. Like recently, we've done Dale Pollock. He's the founder of Viato. We've done Bob Hollenshed, largest wholesale operator. We've done episodes about Carvana. I've interviewed Matt Watson. He founded Vin Solutions. I interviewed Andrew Gordon. He founded Dealer Science, which was the first digital retail product, and that was acquired by TrueCar. So we have a lot of interesting kind of used car dealer focused content. We also do a blog. So in our blog, we're touching on TCPA, texting, a lot of the hot topics in the industry, and we go in long formats to cover those. How do I get started with online auctions? How to ruin a software implementation. And then we also have what we call Selly guides. So we're doing different guides like used car dealer software guide, getting your used car dealer license. And we have some new guides that are in the works like Facebook Marketplace, for example. So that's something I just wanted to quickly share. We're always trying to put out interesting content for dealers.